cannabis has kind of been trending in the news, and I know that we've talked not on this podcast, but you've talked about cannabis before.
Right.
The bill has been introduced to legalize it federally. And the way that people talk about it at this point, it does kind of seem inevitable. Is this a time to get into cannabis stocks?
What's my answer, Aaron? Do you know my answer?
I kind of do, but I was trying to lead you into that answer, but I don't.
Yes, Aaron and I, for the listeners, the context here is Aaron and I have talked about pot stocks before, cannabis stocks, marijuana stocks, call them what you want. And he knows that I am not, N-O-T, not a fan.
Yeah.
The thing about the cannabis industry is, and I used to be a fan, because it seems like it would fit into my wheelhouse of new technology, new industry, hypergrowth potential, emerging companies very early. Like, it seems to fit into my investment wheelhouse, my style of stock picking. But one of the critical elements of my style of stock picking is that the companies need to be able to make profits. If the company will never make sizable profits at scale, then I have no interest in investing in the company.
Yeah.
And when it comes to cannabis, across the industry, I don't think these companies have a good shot at making big profits ever. The reality is that weed is freaking weed, okay? Cannabis is cannabis. Marijuana is marijuana. Yes, there are different strains. People who smoke it all the time will tell you differently. They're going to tell you right now that I'm completely wrong. But even for those people, you have your favorite weed, and it's the weed that you've been buying for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years from your local dealer down the street. You're not going to change because Canopy Growth or Tilray or Kronos rolls in with some nice brand. Screw that. You know, I have my favorite local weed supply. That's what it is. So there's a huge problem with product commoditization across the entire cannabis industry because weed is weed. And for those who weed isn't weed, you already have your favorites and you're not going to change your brand loyalty there. So I was initially of the opinion that when the cannabis industry boomed, we were going to have like the Coca-Cola of weed emerge, the Pepsi of weed emerge, the Marlboro of weed emerge. Now I don't think that's going to happen at all. I think what the weed industry is going to look like at scale is thousands of tiny little brands. And maybe somebody one day consolidates all them. At that point in time, then I'd be interested. But in the absence of that consolidation, you're going to have a hyper-competitive market with a lot of product commoditization, and that means really low profit margins on what you're selling. And you're seeing that in these companies right now. All these Canadian cannabis stocks, the Canopy Growth, the Kronoses, the Tilrays, the Aurora Cannabises, those companies have seen their revenues grow steadily, and their margins drop steadily, and their losses widen. Those are poor financials. I want to see a company whose revenues are rising and its gross profit margins are rising. And while that company may be losing money, I don't care about that. I want to see its margin profile improve. I'm not seeing margin profile improvements across the cannabis sector, and I've been watching that sector for 4 years now, ever since they really hopped onto the scene in 2018 with the legalization of weed in Canada. So because of that, I have turned bearish on the industry, and I don't think that there is enormous profit production potential in the long run in cannabis. Again, the caveat here is that there could be industry consolidation. A Canopy Growth or somebody could get equipped with a lot of cash and come in and just acquire, and through M&A become the Coca-Cola of cannabis. But nobody has that much firepower on the balance sheet right now to do just that. The company that did have that firepower, Canopy Growth, has completely shifted its growth strategy from spend to grow, spend to grow, spend to grow to let's right size the business, let's become more profitable. So they're not thinking consolidation. I don't think that until that consolidator comes around, the cannabis industry is investable. And for that reason, I am not involved with, invested in, or recommending any pot stocks at the current moment.
So if not pot, then, and again, I know your answer before I asked the question, but if not pot, then is there another sector that you're looking at that might be a better investment strategy?
Right. So yeah, obviously you know my answer. That was a great lead, a good alley-oop, if you will. Psychedelics is a space that I'm very interested in. That is much more investable because in that industry, you don't have commoditization, and instead you have massive competitive moat. So for the viewers out there, psychedelics, yes, I'm talking about MDMA, LSD, psilocybin, magic mushrooms, ketamine. I'm talking about those drugs that a lot of you be like, what? Are you serious? But I am serious because there is prolific academic research out there from some of the top institutions in the country, in the world, that beyond a reasonable doubt scientifically prove that psychedelics have immense therapeutic potential, specifically as it relates to mental health diseases. ADHD, depression, those type addiction, those types of illnesses can be very effectively treated by psychedelic-inspired medicine. So the industry I'm talking about is the emergence of a new class of medicines, psychedelic-inspired medicines, to more effectively treat the mental health illness market globally. That is an industry I'm very excited about because the data bears out that it's going to be very large because the medicines work, and the companies inside of it are developing massive competitive moats. These drugs have to go through clinical trial after clinical trial after clinical trial. They have to pass all of them. I mean, there is no greater competitive moat in capitalism than in biotechnology after you get a drug passed through all those clinical trials, FDA approved, and in market. There is no greater competitive moat than that. So in that sense, the psychedelics market cannot be more different than the cannabis market. Cannabis companies will be lucky at scale to get 20% gross margins. Psychedelic companies at scale will get 50%, 60%, 70% gross margins, if not higher. So I'm really liking what I'm starting to see in the psychedelics market, and all of the interest that I formerly had in cannabis has shifted to psychedelics. Really like a few stocks in that space. The leader is a company called Compass Pathways, the ticker CMPS. It's been beaten down because of the long duration route. It's starting to come back. They have a drug called COMP360 that's psilocybin inspired, the magic mushrooms, and I think that drug is going to change the world. So I really like Compass Pathways stock as a long-term buy and hold. Love the psychedelics industry. Great place to be invested.
Thanks for watching HGI Clips. For the full episode, head on over to our sister channel at Hypergrowth Investing by clicking the link in the description, or listen to the podcast on any of your favorite streaming platforms. We make new episodes every Wednesday, so make sure to check it out and subscribe to never miss any of Luke's Hypergrowth insights.